Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, let me give me 1 second. I'm sorry. So some context for what's going on right now. So this is Ian Ross. He's the policy coordinator for Alzheimer's Association, Aloha chapter. So our state. Um, Ian, to give you some context, you know my father's cooking, right?
Yes, I know I've never eaten your father's cooking. No.
No, you've never eaten it? Not even at the wedding?
Oh, yes, I have eaten your father's cooking.
Yes. So he has this sauce that he makes called Nuclear Meltdown. It's literally just a slurry of ghost and habanero peppers. And I've just eaten a
Well,
spoonful.
so how much did you raise for Alzheimer's by eating that?
$20 and a spoonful after this interview is another 20, which I've got coming to me.
Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah, and by the way,
Well,
to lead us off, why don't you tell us about your challenge?
okay, yeah, so I'm the public policy manager for the Alzheimer's Association. As you can imagine, all of the people who are members were asked to do something for the longest day. And they said, look, if you're not doing anything else, just post to Facebook um, a fundraiser because Facebook makes it nice and easy. And then, sweeten the deal somehow, And so I talked over a few people, including yourself, and the consensus became that I should do push-ups while fundraising for Alzheimer's Association. So I said, okay, maybe one push-up for every $5. And I talked to you, and you said, no, make it every $1.
Yeah, I was like, that's chicken shit.
Yeah, so I thought, maybe I'd raise $500. I do 100 push-ups, a little hard, but not like that difficult. So instead, I made it $1, and I believe as of right now, I've raised $449. And right after the
Yes.
stream, 449 push-ups, and I have to begin on Facebook Live as soon as I get off with you.
Nice. Man,
Good luck.
I almost want you to
You,
post that link.
you know what's great? I was coming to the end of it, and I was like, okay, I'm at 424 push-ups. That's a lot. And my boss just dropped another 25 bucks in right before this call in.
Nice. Add insult to injury.
so, so your injury is likely at this stage.
Oh, I
I've
feel that.
decided I'll be sharing with everyone when I laughably fail around somewhere around 200 or so. I will be posting that I will finish up the push-ups on live stream by the end of the month because this is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And I feel that I stipulate that I would do the push-ups. I stipulate when I begin the stream, but I didn't stipulate when I'd end the stream. So I think that's my technicality so I don't physically die on camera. But I will go until I am so physically exhausted that I'm completely incapable of stopping. And I won't do that after 2 minutes. I'll be going on and off for at least 45 minutes to an hour and a half.
Nice. Yeah, make sure to pace yourself, drink water, and if you
Thank you.
don't make 449 push ups, do sit ups.
You think sit ups is the way to go? I feel like I'm technically not allowed to do that based on the dumb flyer I am.
Squats?
Squat seems a bit more likely. One person suggested when I posed this question that I take shots. I feel that's the most likely to kill me.
Yeah, that's like Vomit City right there. Like just feel like middle of like your 240th push up and you just like heave. That's
Yes,
when things
yes.
go wrong.
Oh,
Gone
yes.
sexual in the hood.
The 449 push-ups, the first 400 is easy. It's the last 49 that kill you.
Oh yeah. So tell us a little more about yourself.
Sure. So, let's see. I was born here in Hawaii. My mother's from the United States. My father's from Australia. So I grew up going between countries a bit. Um, Alzheimer's has been a topic that was brought up with my family ever since I was a young child because both of my grandmothers were diagnosed and passed away from Alzheimer's disease. My maternal grandmother was early onset. So it was always a very important issue to me. It's always important to the family. There's, to this day, family members are very worried about each other's, potential cognitive declines and those types of discussions happening. So I worked between internships and everything else. I've worked on the county, state, and federal level. And when there was an opening for public policy and advocacy manager, I applied for it. So I started in October. And I feel like it's a really good fit with the types of things I've worked on and my personal history. And Yeah, that's the relevant point to why I'm calling in today and why I'm so supportive of what you're doing.
Awesome. So, as the public policy manager for the Alzheimer's Association, can you tell us what does the Alzheimer's Association do? Like, what is
So
it?
Alzheimer's, yeah, so Alzheimer's Association does a whole lot. It was founded in 1980, and it was a reaction to this growing public health crisis, and when people really didn't know much about it, and there wasn't a lot of support. The Alzheimer's Association tries to do, I would talk about like a full court press on the issue of Alzheimer's disease. So what I'm working on is policies. I'm working with state and federal officials, and every once in a while might touch county issues, and I'll touch upon that later. Um, to try to give support to people with Alzheimer's disease and the Ohana, their family,
Yeah.
and especially caregivers. So we do everything from support to caregivers, training. We have a 24-hour helpline that anyone can call if they need help. We do the public policy and trying to deal with this. One of the big things we push for is more research funding because our goal is to see a world without Alzheimer's disease. So we do everything we can to help people with the disease now, to help their families, to help try to push for a cure and help change public policy. So we try to do everything we can to make life better on those fronts.
Guess that mic's not working. What are some recent achievements of the Alzheimer's Association?
So on the policy side, which is what I can probably best speak to, is that some of the really big achievements recently was that we worked with House and Senate leaders in Hawaii to craft a bill that would fund an Alzheimer's coordinator position in the Executive Office on Aging. So a little more information about Alzheimer's disease. And what a lot of people don't know is it is the most expensive disease in America and the most expensive disease in Hawaii. So in Hawaii, for Medicare spending, we spend about $207 million a year. And then for Medicaid, everyone who's on Medicaid or has Alzheimer's disease is spending up to just under $18,000 a year. This is enormously expensive, and a lot of the cost actually falls onto personal families as well, which isn't counted there. And the biggest cost, of course, is the emotional impact to families and to caregivers, which we can't even begin to put a dollar sign on. But one thing we can put a dollar sign on is just how much time caregivers give to people with Alzheimer's disease. And if they worked in the economy and spent that time, just getting something like an average wage of like $13, $14 an hour, it would be equivalent to $1 billion of economic activity here in Hawaii. So we know this is a really costly type of disease. So finally, there's going to be a coordinator position in the Executive Office on Aging to try to coordinate private and public resources. And I'm really happy to share this with you because I just got word yesterday. The governor has decided that he will sign the bill into law this coming Tuesday.
Nice.
So we are very excited about that. You always have to hold your breath. You can't, count your eggs before they hatch. But this was the first time it passed the legislature, and the governor does plan to sign it. Um, and we'll have someone who's just trying to manage the cost of this very expensive disease. Another recent win is were able to help work with the city and county of Honolulu to recognize June as Alzheimer's and Brain Health Awareness Month. And one of the things they did about that is they lit up the city hall purple and several other buildings in Honolulu lit up purple. And, that can seem purely symbolic on first glance, but it's really important to remind people who are family members of Alzheimer's disease that they're not alone, that people do care and they're working on things. And finally, public awareness is the currency by which we're able to pass important legislation. We actually learned during the meeting that the managing director of the city and county of Honolulu is a caregiver, and her mother has Alzheimer's disease. And those types of conversations just wouldn't take place if it wasn't for these important recognition events.
That's a very good point. Like, it's hard to think of it from just like an awareness standpoint actually mattering or translating into actionable content, but this stream and all of our streams for that matter gain visibility directly just from people's eyes on our streams. And that amount of exposure brings more people in, and for an event like this, brings in more prospective donors, and also brings in more conversations being had between our viewers and other people, between our viewers and each other. Wouldn't happen if we didn't have people watching and talking about this right now. So awareness actually does matter a lot for that.
Absolutely, because in a democracy, you need a majority support. You need a majority, and that requires some level of awareness. So it has to be understood as an issue. Um, and beyond the policy side, you're talking about the donors. Maybe they'll be a bit more conscious of the fact they may know caregivers for people with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Specifically, in Hawaii, there's 65,000 caregivers for people with Alzheimer's disease. That's out of a population of 1.4 million. Pretty much because everyone in Hawaii knows everyone, right, Colton?
Yeah.
That means everyone knows multiple caregivers, and the
About
caregivers often
65,000.
don't open up
Yeah.
about difficulty in what they're working on. And I think things like this can also increase individual compassion, which, if we have a little bit more of that in society, we're doing a bit better.
Yeah. What's your current agenda for this year?
So great question. So I'm going to talk. So we're ending up our fiscal year right now.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I'll hit the federal and what we're working on. For state, it's still coming into vision, and I'll explain that. But for the federal level, there's four big priorities, and everyone can potentially contact the members of Congress about these if they want to, and I encourage them to. So two are funding priorities. First and foremost, we need to increase the amount of money spent on research. It used to be the case back in 2010, 2012, that only around 400 to 500 million dollars were spent every year on research. Now, this is the most expensive disease in America. So that meant for every $1 we spent on research, we're spending about $500 on care. And so that's really not a proper investment because research brings down costs. It helps us potentially find the cure. I'm happy to share since 2011, when we only had $448 million a year into research, we now are spending 2.4 billion. And that's thanks to the hard work of advocates. And we want to continue to build on that and increase that by another few $100 million. Second priority that we passed a really important bill called the BOLD Act, building our largest dementia infrastructure. What we need is that's a bill without teeth because it's not funded yet. And a lot of what I'm telling you right now are really big dollar signs attached to it. But to fund the BOLD Act, we just need $20 million.
Oh, that's like
And
pennies.
but Congress hasn't moved on it yet. So it's very important that Congress knows this is a priority.
Right.
Um, And what it does is it sets up centers of excellence. So we can't get everything right everywhere right now, but we want to try to get things right in certain key areas to begin to be cornerstones for better policy, better treatment, better support. And so that's what the BOLD Act does. A lot of other things too, but I'll just leave it at that for this. And there's two more bills that are very important. One of them is the Improving Hope Act. Essentially, long story short, the biggest cost related to Alzheimer's disease, it comes about from the lack of sufficient family planning. Things are more expensive if families don't sit down and plan out what to do when there's a dementia diagnosis, or even in advance of one, just as a good financial plan. So, under Medicaid and Medicare, there is now a service where you can sit down with your doctor like 30 minutes or an hour or something along those lines and make those plans. And the amount of improvement this adds to like the caregiving for the person is enormous. But only 1% of people who've been diagnosed since this came about have actually done this and been able to receive it. So we need to make sure doctors have the training and doctors are bringing it up as soon as a diagnosis occurs. So that's the Improving Hope Act. And the final one, I think this one will be important to you, um, is the Younger Alzheimer's Onset Act. And what this does is currently a lot of the support that goes to families when there's an Alzheimer's diagnosis is locked in something called the Older Americans Act. And I know I'm
Hmm.
throwing a lot of acts out, but this is what the basic happens. Congress has just given a minimum age requirement for being able to get certain types of Alzheimer's support, but Alzheimer's doesn't necessarily know an age. There were 200,000 currently diagnosed people in the United States who have a younger onset, and deserve the services as well. So we just get rid of that age discrimination to make sure they get all the services that anyone else gets.
That, I mean, is important for me actually.
Uh,
Um,
the the last one, because I was going to mention state, I was mentioning this very briefly, is we have an upcoming luncheon with some key legislators where we're going to really talk some blue sky kind of planning. Our legislative session doesn't begin until January, and my idea is always to do a mix of aiming for the stars, but also getting low hanging fruit. So we're
yep.
going to try to put together a bundle, but it's going to look like this. It's going to look like a mix of more training requirements for people who interact with people with Alzheimer's disease,
Okay.
more support for caregivers, and working to build on the Alzheimer's coordinator position that's been passed.
Good. It's a good way to make use of the off season as well.
Yeah, they I'm always working on something.
Yeah.
You know
So
what starts right after this, right?
what?
Walk season. We're gonna
Walk.
start planning walk the
That's
walk
right.
down Alzheimer's. Yes,
Yep.
so those are quite those require a lot of work
Yep.
and a lot of coordination.
Yeah, they do. I know I'm a part of the Relay for Life coordination as well, like auxiliary, but I'm part of that as well for ACS, and there's a lot that goes into coordinating events like that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your volunteering.
Yeah.
I used to volunteer for ACS as well, the American Cancer Society.
Yep. You're actually the one that got me into it.
I know. I'm talking to your streamers as if I don't know you much as well as I do.
Valid. So you mentioned research, and I hear a lot about breakthroughs that might lead to Alzheimer's cures, but not a lot of follow up. Is your association's focus on finding more on finding a cure prevention or on quality of care and support methods? Like, which is the higher priority for Alzheimer's Association? Which do you think should be a higher priority, and why?
Okay, so very good question. I think it's absolutely crucial we help people who need help right now, and that's something which the association does. And also, due to the human toll, financial cost, and many other factors, we have to work on a cure. So I think you have to chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. There's no other option. So both are important. And I don't mean this as a cop out answer, and I'll go into a little bit of why. By 2050, the federal government alone, in today's dollars, will be spending $1 trillion a year on Alzheimer's funding for people who currently have the disease. We can save trillions between now and then just by doing more early diagnosis and more support and more planning. And so these two clearly go hand in hand, exactly with the goal of trying to work on a cure. Now, the research is going now. We don't have a cure. It's actually we don't have a treatment, and there's no way to slow the disease down. And those three factors are only true of Alzheimer's out of 10 leading causes of death in the United States. So we have a lot of work to do. But there are really important things that are found, like in the Sprint 2.0 study that recently came out that found a really high correlation between high blood pressure and cognitive decline. And essentially found if you have high blood pressure and you're able to reduce it so you no longer have high blood pressure, your chance of experiencing cognitive decline goes down by 20%. And that's a really firm number of a lot of data behind it. And what we know about the relationship between cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease is you don't get Alzheimer's disease without first going through a period of cognitive decline. The ratio between the high blood pressure and Alzheimer's might even be stronger than that, but that's as far as we know right now. And so identifying risk factors is very important and identifying correlations and those things. And this will help us with developing treatments and cures.
Okay. So we already know a little bit about me and why this isn't necessarily the case. Um, but Alzheimer's is commonly thought of as an old person's disease, right? It won't
Yeah.
affect me for a long time. It won't affect any of us probably for decades. So why should we worry about it now?
Well, first thing I want to do is there's two parts, right? There's the fact of it, and then there's the perception. So the perception is as an old person's disease, but it's important to understand this is a middle of life disease. By the time Alzheimer's is detected, there's often been a lot of cognitive decline before, and it's been developing for years, potentially decades. So it is happening earlier than people think. Maybe it's thought of a lot more of old person disease because the longer you live, the more likely your chances go up of having it. but we need to think of it more as middle of life. Now, that might still be too far out for some people to care, but what I'll just say is the future's
Okay,
real.
great.
It's
For
coming,
Donna more and
and the
my
best time to
mama.
plan for it is now. So if you think it won't be a concern until later, then you should get the ball rolling now to help yourself. But for a lot of people, it's not a concern for later. For example, for you or for me, it's a concern in your case right now, and it's a concern for me somewhat in my past, and I know it will potentially affect my future as well. But it's important that we begin important work of addressing this really awful disease. And um, and that's what I have to say about it. If people can't be incentivized by the fact that I can tell them that if we work hard now, they potentially can have a cure and never have to experience one of the worst diseases that are currently in the world. I don't know what other incentive I can give them.
Fair. So, we know why awareness is important. We know why money is important. But why is advocacy important on a personal level? Like, I'm an active person politically, um,
Yes.
but the average person like just votes or goes to church on Sunday and occasionally chips in or something like that. Um, they might feel helpless, like there's not much that they can do. Why is advocacy for them on the average guy or average girl level important?
I think there's two really important factors. So the first one, I'm going to preface this by saying I in no way mean to undercut the extraordinarily brave, powerful, and effective testimony and advocacy of people with Alzheimer's disease. But the case with this disease is people who are suffering from it have a much harder time um, being able to advocate and speak up for themselves. So I would say to some degree, in a real way, we have a moral obligation to speak for and stand up for and advocate for those who have difficulty doing it for themselves. Um, the the kind of the building on that is that everyday folks should be working on this because that speaks to legislators better, not worse. Legislators, even members of Congress, people think of them as so far away. They prioritize community testimony to a very high extent. They listen to constituent calls and emails. They're very concerned about opinion polls in their districts. And being able to be someone who can go and lend your face and lend your voice to an issue does make a real impact when votes occur. And what I would say is we need people to help humanize policy. And we'll work with you from wherever you're at if you want to get involved with advocacy. And finally, there's an empowering aspect to it. I talk to caregivers and other people who say, I don't really have a very important story. I'm going to give an example of one of my advocates without using her name. Like she's say, I don't have a real story to tell. I'm a Native Hawaiian whose father had early onset, and that drove me to study neurology. And I would have taken a job in the mainland that paid more, but I came to Hawaii to be a caregiver and neurologist to help people. And I don't really know what else to say about it. And what I have to say at that point is like, your story is incredible. It's persuasive to every legislator who hears it. And we need to hear more of that. And other stories are just people who had parents of early onset or had lost their grandparents or were caregivers to loved ones. And those stories can be turned into change. And we work with people to learn how to do that effectively and to be able to lend their voice. And when people learn to do that, I see a lot of people feel a sense of pride because they find something that was so difficult from them can be translated into so much positivity in the real world.
You're
And so that's why
powerfully
advocacy is
Oh,
important.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all. That's why advocacy is important.
Okay. Well, you're powerfully persuasive.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so what can I, average Joe Schmo viewer, do to help?
All right, I'm gonna put this in Discord right now. So one thing they can do is they can donate to your wonderful fundraiser. I think that's very important. But being a public policy and advocacy manager, that second part's important. Uh, I would be remiss not to say that we need more volunteers. And if they're listening to your stream from somewhere in Hawaii, there's one link that helps them all of it. It's alzimpact.org/volunteer. And I put it in the Discord, and I hope we might be able to share it on the screen or put it out there
I
in
just
some way.
typed it out.
Perfect. Thank you. owlsimpact.org/volunteer. We can set you up working on the state level. We can set you up working on the federal level. We'll work with you where you're at. If you are uncomfortable being alone in like advocacy, we can have you wait a little while until our next state advocacy day, and then you can go in big groups to get started. That's where a lot of people get started, and we will help you be able to make a difference. It is the job of me and so many other people around the country to really care about you feeling involved and you being able to make a difference. I tell people, I have such amazing advocates. They know so much more about Alzheimer's and being a caregiver than me. My job isn't to persuade legislators. My job is to schedule meetings and tell these awesome volunteers what rooms to be in and make sure that they have all the talking points they need. And that's what makes the difference. And that's the big thing I want to throw out there. And it looks like I have personally about 5 minutes until I have to start doing push-ups until I die. So hopefully someone will take over after me and get an email to you if you sign up. Colton, I think I lost you for a second.
I muted my mic. Sorry.
No problem.
Let's do a quick. Does anyone else here have any questions in chat?
Not yet. No.
All right.
Nothing yet.
Okay. I'm just gonna put it out for Q&A. You guys can put it out to your chats as well. We're gonna do Q&A time.
Oh no, I have someone donated $30 as I was streaming to.
Enjoy
Oh goodness.
479 push-ups.
Yeah, I think that's the right count.
I want to say I got a donation as well during that interview from Kelly McNeil. She said, for Donna and my mama.
Powerful.
Yep. And I actually know Kelly, and I know some of the experiences that she was going through with end-of-life care for her mom as well. So, yeah.
Well, I hope there's a lot of people wanting to support them and working hard. And every donation I'm incredibly grateful for. You're doing such great work fundraising for here in Hawaii and all across the nation. So Colton, thank you so much for your help.
Of course. Thank you, man. I don't think we have any more questions.
All right, then
I
I'm
haven't
going to go
got
get the
anything.
final count for my push-ups and and
Have
start
fun.
live streaming in just a moment.
All right. Good luck with your live stream. If you want to post a video after the fact on my Discord or something like that, I think everyone would love to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely would.
All right. You can always skip to the end of the video if you just want to see my spread.
Oh, I'll make highlights. Thank you very much, man. Do you have anything, one last word you want to say before we kick you out?
No, just that was the thank you for everything you're doing, and asking for mercy and concern for my push-ups. So you've given plenty of both. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, have a good day, man.
You too.
See ya.
Oh, he kicked him.